the one person, of course, who's responsible is this animal who pulled the trigger. He's the one we hold personally responsible for this, and rightly so. But it's also true that Mayor de Blasio, with his anti-cop rhetoric, has created an atmosphere in the city that has made an occurrence like this much more likely than it otherwise would have been.
All right, folks, let's find out why the man who murdered the 2 New York City police officers might have done it. Of course, we've heard everything from de Blasio's rhetoric, and of course you keep hearing, oh, he was mentally ill. This has nothing to do with anything. He was mentally ill. Joining us now, Dr. Andrew Bostom, professor of medicine at Brown University and author of Iran's Final Solution for Israel, The Legacy of Jihad and Shiite Islamic Jew Hatred in Iran. Hello, doctor.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I think this is very important because, like I said, there's many in the media not even willing to admit that this guy had something against the cops, notwithstanding the fact that he attended a rally, that he said on his Facebook page or wherever he tweeted out, Instagram, why he was going to do what he did. But you have drawn a very interesting thread through the recent slew, I think there are 4 of them, and to me that's a slew, of attacks against police officers here in the West. And you find, specifically to this attacker, there might be an Islamic connection.
Well, absolutely. I mean, people are reluctant to even acknowledge that the man is a professed Muslim, comes from a Muslim background. But yes, there were 4 high-profile attacks by Western Muslims against Western societies, specifically targeting police, since the September 22nd fatwa by an important ISIS ideologue was posted online. And in that fatwa, it calls for general attacks on Westerners, but it specifically targets the police. So we had the Hyder attack in Melbourne, Australia, literally a day after that fatwa came out back in September. A month later, we have another New York area attack by Zale Thompson. And then the same day that, again, his name is Ismail Abdullah Brinsley, brutally slaughtered those 2 cops in Brooklyn, there was a French Burundian convert to Islam who attacked police in France. So since that fatwa has been issued, there have been 4 specific attacks on police. Moreover, we now know from just citizen journalists, etc., but it was a good report in the Daily Caller, going through Brinsley's personal profile, his social media profile, we find some very ominous things about mosques that he either frequented or discussed. These leads have to be followed up, that have been hotbeds of jihadism and have been subject to investigation by the NYPD itself. And the most recent revelation shows him walking to one of these mosques from last September. And this particular mosque has been associated with paintball games to create jihad assassins, specifically methods to disarm the police. It's been associated with jihad terror activities and funding. I mean, these are leads that serious journalists must be following up upon, and they're not doing it thus far.
All right, so you talk about this one mosque in Brooklyn. You say he frequented or discussed mosques that are hotbeds of jihad. What other, I mean, how many are we talking about here? We have the video, you say, of him approaching one mosque in Brooklyn, where his mother lives. Where else?
Also another mosque in Brooklyn that became infamous because of the blind sheikh, the Al Farouk Mosque. There's a discussion of Eid celebrations there, you know, Muslim holiday celebrations there. But I'm just saying, Steve, that his social media accounts need to be connected to real activities. The other thing is that he posted proudly a very important jihad terror verse from the Quran, Quran 860, so the 8th chapter, the 60th verse, on his Facebook page. And this is a verse that has been cited by the Muslim Brotherhood. It's part of the Iranian constitution. It's cited in a jihad war manual from the Pakistani army. And in fact, it's cited by Islam's prophet himself, Muhammad, for sanctioning his own acts of terror. He says, I have been made victorious with terror, and he refers to the same Quranic verse. Now, these leads, these connections need to be followed up. No one is denying that this man had obvious psychosocial problems. But how his own psychological makeup and his social milieu interacted with Islam, particularly jihadist hotbeds, really needs to be explored in light of these 4 attacks that have occurred in such a short time frame.
So you're talking about jihad, you would call it jihadist postings on his Facebook?
Well, I don't know why else you would cite that particular verse. I mean,
all right. So jihadist postings, the visits or associations with mosques that have been associated with jihad. So why isn't anybody following up on this?
Look, Steve, let's pray that quietly the NYPD is doing this. What I'm concerned about is the absolute taboo by the mainstream media, including, unfortunately, Fox at this point. That clip that you had is interesting, but it doesn't get into any of these issues. And I think that this reinforces the fear of journalists that they cannot even suggest these kinds of connections.
Yeah. Doctor, always a pleasure to talk to you, always insightful, and thanks for being brave enough to speak up.
Thank you very much, Steve.
All right, take care. Dr. Andrew Bostom, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting. Let's see if the media does its job. All right, we'll be back with Australian author and philosopher Nick Adams after the break. But first, we all care about our money, and year ahead, year that we just left. Here's your Max to Money moment. Don't go away.